What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another very special edition of Burnout Brighter. On this episode, we are going to be talking all about Forza Horizon 5. I want to start off by saying a big thank you to Xbox Canada for providing us with a code for review. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for the support. Forza Horizon 5, coming from Playground Games, is fantastic. Now, a little bit about my history with racing games. I haven't touched one in, honestly, years. I came up on a lot of Need for Speed Underground and, stuff like Driver, and I absolutely loved Burnout. And I haven't really played too many racing games since then. I think the only one that I've really spent any significant amount of time with was Mario Kart, which is a much more casual, much more arcade style racer. But earlier this year I picked up Game Pass and I dove into a little bit of Forza Horizon 4, and something about it just immediately clicked. With Horizon 5, we are in Mexico. The graphics are beautiful. The world is incredible. Everything looks fantastic. I played it across actually a bunch of different consoles. Played it on the OG Xbox One. I played it on the Xbox Series X, and I also played it on my PC. So I'll give a little bit of impressions about each one. Xbox One actually ran totally fine. Poppin' was a little bit more noticeable, and it did run at 30 frames per second compared to my PC and the Series X's at 60 frames per second, but I was pleasantly surprised with how good the game looked. Especially if you hadn't played any of the other versions, it runs really well on Xbox One and looks really good. And it being available on Game Pass, why not take the opportunity to jump in and check it out, even if you're playing on last generation's hardware. Playing on Series X and PC though, the game looks phenomenal. It is beautiful. The reflections of the cars, how everything is whipping by, the environment as it changes around you, and a lot of the weather effects as well just look fantastic. When you kind of go into a river as you're kind of ripping through it and the water just pops up onto your mirror and it's just all over the place, it looks fantastic. The lightning will crackle down during certain storms. There are sandstorms that'll just completely envelop the entire screen. It looks fantastic. I am so pleasantly surprised that my PC was able to run it really well. I was playing on ultra settings. There was a little bit of points where the game kind of froze for just a bit of a second on PC, but I saw none of that in the Xbox Series X version. It looked and played fantastic, and even on PC, the moments were very few and very far between, so I can't really chalk it up to anything. I think it just looked great. One of my favorite things about Forza Horizon 5, it's just so bombastic. It's so cinematic. There's so much going on, especially with a lot of the main missions, the festival missions. You'll have planes flying by, you see the hot air balloons in the sky or fireworks going off. It reminded me a lot of, not to the full extent, but a lot of Fast and the Furious, that kind of vibe, that larger than life racing that still feels very grounded in reality in Forza Horizon. There'll be times when you're just ripping down a mountain and there's cars flying all around you. There's chatter going on in the headset because of your team talking about it, or you're hearing things about the festival, and it just all feels like you're playing this kind of big movie, and it's just so engrossing. And I loved every second of a lot of those main missions. The way that they grab you and pull you in is just fantastic. The voice acting is fine, and there isn't much of a story to speak of, but those main festival missions, along with a lot of the kind of finales, are incredible to behold. They're just so much fun to watch, and the game's opening is just so loud and so in your face as cars are dropping out of an airplane to kind of introduce you to a lot of the different locales that you'll be racing through. It looks fantastic, and I'm really surprised with how much variety there is inside of the missions. You have your straight racing missions that are just, get to the end of the course before anybody else does, or run a couple laps around this area. But then you also have missions that'll send you up a volcano to kind of collect scientific information about its imminent eruption. You'll have missions that you'll be driving a massive parade float and then end up jumping it over a canyon. There's so much going on in this game that, for me, when I think of racing games, I think of a lot of the Need for Speed, old school Need for Speed and Burnout days, where all it was race on a track and that was it. Forza Horizon has become this massive franchise that just has so much going on in it, and it's way too much fun to experience. And there are those times where you'll be driving and you go off this massive jump and everything just kind of slows down for a second, and you have a sec to take in the world around you, and it's just beautiful, and it's just so engrossing and so much fun. As for the types of missions, you'll have to unlock different areas to kind of provide you with different mission structure. You'll start off with the Mexico Festival series. You unlock different areas. You'll get added on stuff like Baja, which is cross country. You'll have Wilds, which is much more dirt racing. You'll have Rush, which is a bunch of like massive PR stunts. Street Scene, which is your classic street racing. And Apex, which is just your normal road racing. For me, I absolutely loved the Baja racing. For me, it was usually the one that took you a little bit more off-road. You got some really interesting scenes and some really interesting locations as you rip through the different areas of Mexico. And I also had a lot of love for Wilds, especially when they take you through different deserts and stuff. It's big, it's bombastic, and it's so much fun to get through. And the game is tough. I was playing mostly on average, and I dropped to novice a couple times because I was getting my butt handed to me at the beginning and really had to relearn and rethink about how to drive these cars. I think one of the biggest reasons that Forza Horizon 5 also kind of stands out to me is because it seems to meet this really interesting spot between arcade and sim. It doesn't really feel like either one in its full extent, but when you're racing and you start to figure out about, okay, hold on, I need to do this to get around this curve, everything starts to click and you're kind of like, okay, you know what, I can take on the next difficulty ranking. And I have to say, especially for me, who's a relative newcomer coming back to this genre, the rewind feature is incredible. So if you make a mistake, you just hit Y and it'll rewind you a little bit back in time throughout the race, and you're able to kind of reanalyze what you're supposed to be doing. For me, it was a fantastic learning device, figuring out how I should properly take corners, what I should do to kind of really get around an enemy. And sometimes it was just funny stuff like flying off a jump and one of the AI's cars landing on top of me and sending me spinning out, which just made me laugh as, I rewound back watching it from a different angle. The rewind feature for me is fantastic, and there's so much here for new players to the genre, or players who, like myself, may have not spent a lot of time with racing games in the last few years. It's fantastic, and for the players who are never going to use it, good on you. For me, I loved every second of it because it didn't make me feel like I had to restart every mission. It made me feel like I could make mistakes as I was racing and learn from them rather than just being a quick undo button. It was, okay, how should I be taking this corner so the next time I come around this lap or for the next race, I understand how to approach it better. I also was very married to one specific car at the beginning of the game, but it really does let you say, hey, these are some of the cars that are recommended for this race, and lets you play around a lot within them. I am also not a massive car person, so for me, there's not a lot of value in seeing these absolute multitude of different cars from different eras. I got a kick out of seeing the Warthog from Halo. I got a kick out of seeing a Hot Wheels car. Like, that kind of stuff is fantastic for me, but there's so much there for people who really care about cars to kind of dive into and look at some, older cars that I'm sure they're going to be very excited about. When it comes to upgrades as well, I love that there's just an upgrade for me button, which again, I used plenty because it didn't make me need to dive into the nitty-gritty of every car, but it did let me play with the cars that I wanted to play with in a way that made me feel like I was progressing. Again, there's plenty of upgrade paths across all the different cars to really fine-tune your experience, but for me, the auto upgrade worked fine, and I enjoyed doing it. The gameplay itself, again, is a lot of fun. There's a lot of learning in it, and I really enjoyed that, especially when I got to the point where at the beginning, I was barely clearing, 6th on average. By the end of it, as where I am at now, which is about 10 to 15 hours in, and again, nowhere close to the actual end. There's so much more for me to do, but there's a lot of trial and error, which I really enjoy. And again, figuring out which car is right for the job and figuring out how to take certain corners and how to maneuver through different tracks was a lot of fun. I haven't messed with the multiplayer too much yet, but I do like that there's a lot of community content already available, and I'm sure there will be a lot more. Playground is doing a lot to make you feel like the different seasons are going to be changing. We're currently in wet season. I imagine later on there will be a dry season, and that might affect the way that the world changes, along with letting you make your own custom races, which you can share online, and let other people play your experience and your tracks the way that you want them to be. It's a lot of fun. Aside from some of the other missions that I really enjoyed, I loved how some of these missions, especially like the expeditions and festivals, were two of my favorite mission types, just because the expeditions really take you out into Mexico and actually do teach you a little bit along the way. And there's certain sections where you'll get to an area and it's just kind of like, okay, explore this area a little bit. It'll give you some objectives as you can kind of explore, but they do some cool, like almost like car platforming sections and different. They really play with the formula in a lot of that side content, which really feels great. And a lot of the characters you meet along the way are a lot of fun to talk to and to listen to. Everything about the game is it just works so well. The thing that I really want to bring home about Forza Horizon 5 is I really do feel like this is a racing game for everyone. For newcomers or players who had stepped away from the genre for a while, there's a lot here that lets you ease into the experience while letting you learn how to drive in different situations. While for veterans of the genre, there's plenty of difficulty and plenty to love. I'm having a fantastic time with Forza Horizon 5. I'm so excited to see what Mexico still has in store for me, and I'm loving it, and I hope you go check it out. Make sure you go check out Forza Horizon 5. It's on Game Pass, which makes it just free for you. Go check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Another massive thank you to Xbox Canada for providing us with a code for a review. We appreciate it very, very much. If you like what you saw, please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.